Just the prince. I have nothing important to do. He stormed out of the dining room. He walked past the beautiful paintings on the wall and the sculptures of leopards. He walked out the front door to where his big black SUV was parked. His driver, a young man named Sunday, jumped up from a bench. "Good morning, sir. Ready to go, sir?" "Give me the keys," Ben demanded. "But, sir, the king said I should drive you." "Give me the keys or you are fired," Ben shouted. Sunday quickly handed over the keys. His hands were trembling. "Yes, sir. Sorry, sir." Ben climbed into the driver's seat. He started the engine. It roared like a beast. He slammed the door and sped toward the palace gates. The guards scrambled to open the heavy iron gates before Ben crashed into them. He drove out onto the main road. The red dust flew up behind his car, coating the roadside stalls where women sold roasted corn and pure water. Ben turned up his music loud. He wanted to drown out his father's voice. He wanted to drown out his own thoughts. He needed a plan. He couldn't wait for his father to die of old age. That could take another 10 years. Ben would be an old man himself by then. No, he needed to be king now. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. "Mark," he said, "meet me at the hotel. Now." The Cool Breeze Hotel was the best hotel in the village, which meant it had a generator that worked most of the time and cold beer. It was painted yellow and green. Ben sat in the back corner of the bar. It was dark inside. The curtains were drawn to keep out the heat. A television in the corner was showing a football match, but the sound was off. Mark walked in 10 minutes later. Mark was Ben's best friend since primary school. He was tall and very thin, with a face that looked like a rat. He always wore dark sunglasses, even indoors. Mark did not come from a rich family like Ben, but he liked rich things. He liked to spend Ben's money. "My prince," Mark said, spreading his arms wide, "long may you reign." "Shut up," Ben grumbled. "I am not reigning anything. I am just sitting here drinking warm soda." Mark sat down. He waved at the waiter. "2 cold beers, and bring some pepper soup. Fish, not goat." He turned back to Ben. He lowered his sunglasses to look at him. "What happened? Did the old man say no again?" "He treats me like a boy," Ben said. He clenched his fist on the table. He talked about wisdom and patience. "I am sick of patience, Mark. I want my inheritance." Mark leaned in close. He smelled of cigarettes and cheap cologne. "You know, Ben, there is a way." "What way?" "You have to force his hand," Mark whispered. "You have to make him want to leave." "How?" "He is stubborn as a goat," Ben said. "He thinks the gods chose him to rule forever." Mark looked around to make sure no one was listening. The bar was empty except for a man sleeping on a chair in the far corner. "Listen," Mark said, "my uncle works in the record office in the city. He found something interesting. An old file." "What kind of file?" "A file about your father and a marriage certificate." Ben frowned. "So, he married my mother, Queen Rose?" "Yes," Mark smiled, showing yellow teeth. "But the date on the certificate, it is after you were born." Ben paused. He tried to do the math in his head. "That doesn't make sense. I am the first son. My mother is the queen." "That is what we all think," Mark said. "But there are rumors, Ben. Village talk. The old women in the market, they whisper." "What do they whisper?" Ben asked, his voice low. "They say that before your mother came, the king had another wife, a village girl. Her name was Ngozi. They say he loved her too much. It made the chiefs angry because she was poor. They say she got pregnant first." Ben felt a cold feeling in his stomach. If she had a child, and that child was a boy, then that child would be the rightful king, not you, Mark finished the sentence. Ben laughed nervously. "That is stupid. If there was another brother, where is he? Where is this Ngozi?" "That is the mystery," Mark said. "They vanished. Poof. Gone. Your mother, Queen Rose, came into the picture, and suddenly the first wife disappeared. People say she died. Others say she went mad." Ben sat back in his chair. He felt dizzy. If this was true, his whole life was a lie. If there was an older brother, Ben was nothing. "Why are you telling me this?" Ben asked. "Because knowledge is power," Mark said. "If we can find out the truth, we can use it. If the first wife is dead, good. We destroy the proof. But if she is alive, or if the son is alive, we must find them before anyone else does. And then what? Ben asked. Mark made a slicing motion across his throat with his finger. Then we make sure they never come back. Ben stared at his friend. He had always known Mark was bad, but murder? I can't do that, Ben stammered. Do you want to be king? Mark asked. Or do you want to be the servant of a stranger? Ben thought about the palace. He thought about the cars. He thought about the way people bowed to his father. He thought about losing it all to some unknown brother. The anger returned, hotter than before. Where do we start? Ben asked. Mark grinned. There is a woman in the evil forest, the one they call Mary, the mad woman. She has been there for 15 years, the same time your brother would have been born. She speaks nonsense. But sometimes she sings royal songs. Ben nodded slowly. The evil forest. We go tonight, Mark said. We scare her, we make her talk. If she knows something, we will know. Okay, Ben said. Tonight. The waiter arrived with the pepper soup. The smell of spices filled the air. But Ben had lost his appetite. He was thinking about a brother he never knew he had, and a crown he was willing to kill for. The evil forest was not a place where normal people went. It was a thick jungle on the edge of Umu Eze. The trees were huge, with roots that twisted like snakes across the ground. The canopy of leaves was so thick that even in the daytime, the forest floor was dim and gloomy. People threw their trash at the edge of the forest. Old broken cars, rusty fridges, and piles of plastic bags lay there, rotting in the sun. Deep past the trash, where the trees grew close together, there was a small clearing. In the middle of the clearing stood a hut. It was a sad little house. The walls were made of red mud that was cracking and falling apart. The roof was a mess of old palm fronds and plastic sheets tied down with vines. This was the home of Mary. Mary sat on a log outside her hut. She was a woman who looked like she had lived 100 years of pain. Her hair was thick with dirt and matted into long, rope-like dreadlocks that hung down her back. Her skin was dark and leathery from the sun. She wore a dress that was just rags stitched together with colored threads. To the villagers, she was a monster. They threw stones at her if she came too close to the market. They told their children, "Be good, or Mary will eat you." But Mary did not eat children. She mostly ate papaws and mangoes she found in the bush. Sometimes she caught giant snails and roasted them. Today Mary was staring at a small fire she had made. She was humming a tune. It was a soft, gentle song, the kind a mother sings to put a baby to sleep. Sleep, my turtle dove, sleep, my prince. The moon is watching you, the stars are your fence. She stopped singing suddenly. She tilted her head. Her eyes, usually cloudy and confused, looked sharp for a moment. Where is he? She whispered. She looked around the empty forest. Joseph, Joseph, come and eat. There was no one there, just the chirping of crickets and the call of a hornbill bird. Mary started to cry. She didn't know why she was crying. She felt a hole in her heart, a space where something very important used to be. She remembered a face, a tiny face, a baby laughing, and then fire? No, not fire. Darkness, a bitter taste in her mouth. She stood up and began to pace around her hut. She walked with a limp. Her left leg had been broken a long time ago and never healed properly. They took him, she muttered to the trees. The lady with the red lips. She took my heart. The sky above the forest began to grow dark. Big grey clouds rolled in, covering the sun. A wind picked up, shaking the leaves of the palm trees. It was going to rain. A heavy rain. Mary didn't mind the rain. Sometimes she felt the rain was the sky crying with her. She crawled into her hut. Inside it was simple. A mat on the floor, a pot for water, and a pile of strange things she had collected. Shiny stones, bird feathers, pieces of colourful glass. To anyone else, it was trash. To Mary, these were treasures for the king. When the king comes, she whispered, picking up a blue piece of glass, I will give him this diamond. Thunder rumbled, long and low, like a drum beating underground. Mary curled up on her mat. She closed her eyes. The memories were always closer when she slept. In her dreams, she wasn't dirty. She wasn't mad. She was beautiful. She wore a dress of gold cloth. She sat on a high chair, and beside her was a man who looked at her with so much love it made her warm. "David," she whispered in her sleep. Suddenly, a loud noise woke her up. Crack! It was the sound of a dry branch breaking under a heavy foot. Mary sat up, her heart pounding. It wasn't an animal. Animals walked softly. This was a person, or people. She heard voices, men's voices. They were coming closer. "This place stinks," a voice said. It sounded arrogant. "Just keep walking, Prince," another voice said. "The hut is just ahead." Mary crawled to the corner of her hut. She grabbed a rusty machete she used to cut yams. She held it tight with both hands. She was scared, but she was also angry. This was her home. This was the only place she was safe. The footsteps stopped right outside her door. A bright beam of light from a torch cut through the cracks in her mud wall. "Hey, crazy woman," the voice shouted. "Come out, we have gifts for you." Mary knew that voice was lying. Gifts did not come with shouting. Gifts did not come in the dark. She stayed silent, pressing her back against the cold mud wall. She waited. "Maybe she is dead," the first voice said. "She is not dead." "I can smell her," the second voice laughed cruelly. Mary's grip on the machete tightened. She would not let them take her. She would not let them take her baby, even though she couldn't remember where her baby was. In her mind, he was sleeping right behind her. She had to protect him. "Come out," the voice roared again, and a heavy boot kicked the door. Mud dust fell from the ceiling. Mary let out a low growl, like a mother leopard protecting her cubs. She was ready to fight. While Ben and Mark were creeping through the forest, life in the palace continued. In the servants' quarters behind the main kitchen, a young boy named Joseph was washing his face. Joseph was about 17 years old. He was tall and thin, with short hair and very dark skin. He had a calm face, but his eyes were old. They were the eyes of a boy who had seen too much hardship. Joseph was an orphan. He had grown up in a crowded orphanage in the city of Enugu. He didn't know his mother or father. The nuns at the orphanage told him he was found in a basket near the gate when he was a baby. 2 months ago, he had walked all the way to Umueze looking for work. The head cook at the palace, a kind woman named Mama Nkechi, had taken pity on him. She gave him a job washing plates and sweeping the yard. Joseph was hard-working. He never complained. He woke up at 4 a.m. every day. But inside, Joseph felt strange. Since he arrived in Umueze, he felt at home. The red dust felt familiar under his feet. The smell of the palm oil stew from the kitchen felt like a memory. Tonight, Joseph was tired. He had spent the whole day scrubbing the blackened pots from the king's lunch. "Joseph," a voice called out. It was Mama Nkechi. She was a large woman with a colorful head tie. "Yes, Mama," Joseph answered, drying his face with a towel. "The king is asking for tea. The night guard is busy. Can you run it up to his study? Be very quiet. He is not feeling well." "Yes, Mama." Joseph quickly put on a clean shirt. He arranged the tea tray, a teapot, a cup, and a small plate of biscuits. He carried it carefully toward the main house. The palace was quiet at night. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioners. Joseph walked up the wide marble staircase. He felt small in the big house. He looked at the pictures on the wall, pictures of past kings. They all looked fierce and proud. He reached the king's study and knocked gently. "Enter," a weak voice said. Joseph opened the door. King David was sitting in his armchair, looking at a photo album. He looked very old tonight. His face was pale. "Your tea, Your Highness," Joseph said, placing the tray on the table. "Thank you, boy," the king said. He didn't look up. He touched the photo he was looking at. Joseph glanced at the photo. It was a picture of a beautiful young woman. She was laughing, throwing her head back. She wasn't wearing royal clothes. She was wearing a simple village dress. "Who is she, sir?" Joseph asked before he could stop himself. He gasped and covered his mouth. "I am sorry, Your Highness. I should not ask questions." The king looked up. He didn't look angry. He looked sad. "It is okay." The king smiled weakly. Her name was Ngozi. She was very special to me. She had a spirit like fire and water mixed together. She is beautiful, Joseph said. She was, the king sighed. She is gone now, long gone. The king tried to reach for the teacup, but his hand shook violently. The cup rattled on the saucer. He couldn't lift it. Let me help you, sir, Joseph said. He stepped forward. With gentle hands he lifted the cup to the king's lips. The king took a sip. Thank you, the king said. He looked at Joseph's hand. You have strong hands, working hands. Joseph smiled shyly. I work hard, sir. The king studied Joseph's face. He frowned slightly. Have we met before, boy? You look familiar. I work in the kitchen, sir. You might have seen me sweeping. No, the king murmured. It is in the eyes. You have eyes like... He looked back at the photo of Ngozi, then back at Joseph. Suddenly, the door to the study banged open. It was Queen Rose. She stood in the doorway, wearing a long red nightgown. Her face was covered in thick makeup, even at night. She looked furious. What is this rat doing here? She screamed, pointing at Joseph. Joseph jumped back, nearly dropping the tray. I brought tea, my queen. Get out, Rose shouted. How dare you enter the king's private room? Do you want to steal? Are you a thief? No, madam, I swear, Joseph cried. Rose, calm down, the king said, his voice finding a little strength. The boy was helping me. My hands were shaking. You have guards to help you, Rose snapped at her husband. You lower yourself by letting these dirty street rats touch you. She turned to Joseph. Get out before I have you flogged. Joseph bowed hastily. Yes, my queen. Sorry, my queen. He ran out of the room, his heart beating fast. He hated Queen Rose. She was mean to everyone, but she seemed to hate him specifically. Every time she looked at him, it was like she was seeing a ghost. Joseph ran down the stairs and out the back door into the cool night air. He needed to breathe. He leaned against a pillar in the courtyard. He looked down at the ground. Something sparkled in the dirt, reflecting the moonlight. Joseph bent down. He brushed away the red dust. It was a bead. But it wasn't a normal plastic bead. It was large, heavy, and made of coral. It was red with a creamy white swirl in the middle. It looked exactly like the beads the king wore around his neck, but this one looked ancient. It looked like it had been buried in the earth for a long time, and the rain had just washed it up. Joseph picked it up. It felt warm in his hand. A strange feeling washed over him, a feeling of sadness, but also of belonging. Why does this feel like it is mine, he wondered. He remembered the woman in the king's photo. She was wearing beads just like this one. Joseph looked around to make sure no one was watching. He quickly put the bead in his pocket. He didn't know why, but he knew he couldn't let Queen Rose see it. It was a secret between him and the red dust of the palace. As he walked back to his room, he heard the sound of a car engine. He looked toward the gate. He saw Prince Ben's black SUV driving in. The car was muddy. Ben and Mark got out. They looked sweaty and frustrated. That witch wasn't there, Ben was saying angrily. We checked the hut, empty. She's hiding in the bush, Mark replied. We will burn it down next time. Flush her out like a rat. Joseph froze in the shadows. Burn it down? Were they talking about Mary? He watched them go inside. His heart was racing. He touched the bead in his pocket. He realized that the palace was not just a place of work, it was a place of secrets, danger, and wicked plans. And somehow, he was right in the middle of it. The next morning, the palace woke up to the sound of roosters crowing and the smell of frying akara. The sun was brighter than the day before, burning off the dew from the hibiscus flowers in the garden. Joseph was already awake. He had slept poorly. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the angry face of Queen Rose and the sad face of King David. And he felt the weight of the coral bead in his pocket. It felt heavy, like a stone full of secrets. He was sweeping the long driveway when he saw Old Sam arriving. Old Sam was the chief priest of Umu Eze. He was a small man, but he walked with a powerful stride. He wore a red cap with an eagle feather stuck in it, and his ankles were adorned with rattles that made a ch-ch-ch sound with every step. Old Sam stopped when he saw Joseph. He didn't just walk past like the other important people. He stopped and stared. "Good morning, wise one," Joseph said, bowing low. Old Sam didn't answer immediately. He sniffed the air, his nose twitching like a dog catching a scent. He walked around Joseph in a slow circle. "You carry something, boy," Old Sam said. His voice sounded like dry leaves crunching. "Not a burden on your back, but a weight in your spirit." Joseph's hand went instinctively to his pocket. I am just sweeping, sir." "Do not lie to the eyes of the gods," Old Sam said sharply. He pointed his staff at Joseph's chest. "There is a fire around you, a royal fire." Joseph was terrified. Did the priest know about the bead? Was he in trouble? Before he could answer, a guard shouted from the porch, "Hey, priest, the king is waiting." Old Sam lowered his staff. He gave Joseph one last piercing look. "We will speak again, child of dust." He turned and walked up the stairs, his ankle rattles shaking. Joseph let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He quickly finished sweeping and ran to the back of the kitchen. He sat on an overturned bucket and pulled out the bead. In the daylight, it looked even more special. The red coral seemed to have veins running through it, like living blood. He rubbed his thumb over the smooth surface. "What are you doing hiding there?" Joseph jumped. It was Mama Nkechi. She was holding a large knife and a basket of yams. "Nothing, Mama, just resting," Joseph said, quickly hiding the bead in his fist. Mama Nkechi looked at him suspiciously. "You look guilty, Joseph. Did you steal meat from the pot?" "No, Mama, I swear." "Humph. Well, get up. Queen Rose is in a terrible mood today. She is shouting at everyone. If she catches you idling, she will skin you alive." "Why is she angry?" Joseph asked, standing up. "Who knows with that woman?" Mama Nkechi whispered. "She is like a volcano, always rumbling. They say she had a bad dream last night, screamed so loud she woke the guards." Joseph remembered the bead. Did she dream about this? Just then, a loud commotion erupted from the front gate. Joseph and Mama Nkechi ran to look. A group of young men were gathered at the gate. They looked rough and dangerous. They wore torn jeans and dirty t-shirts. Some had scars on their faces. They were known as area boys, local thugs who did dirty jobs for money. The head guard was trying to stop them. "You cannot come in here. This is the king's house." "We have business with the prince," one of the thugs shouted. He had a gold tooth and a red bandana tied around his arm. Prince Ben walked out of the house. He looked annoyed. "Let them in," he told the guard. The guard opened the gate reluctantly. The thugs walked in, swaggering like they owned the place. Ben led them to a corner of the garden, far away from the main windows. Joseph pretended to sweep near the bushes so he could hear. "Is it set?" Ben asked in a low voice. "Yes, boss," the thug with the gold tooth said. "We bought the fuel, 5 gallons. Tonight we light up the forest." "Good," Ben said. He handed the man a thick envelope of cash. "Make sure it burns completely. I want nothing left, not a stick, not a bone." "And the woman?" the thug asked. "If she is inside." "Well, accidents happen," Ben said coldly. "Just make sure she never speaks again." Joseph felt cold all over. They were going to kill Mary. They were going to burn her alive in her hut. He wanted to scream, but he knew if he made a sound, they would kill him too. He slowly backed away, step by step, until he was behind the kitchen wall. Then he ran. He ran to his room and grabbed a small flashlight. He grabbed a machete he used for cutting grass. He didn't know what he was going to do, but he knew he couldn't let Mary die. Inside the palace, in the private consultation room, the air was thick with the smell of burning incense. King David sat on a low stool, facing Old Sam. Old Sam threw a handful of cowrie shells onto a leopard skin rug. He stared at the pattern they made. He frowned. "What do the ancestors say, Sam?" King David asked. His voice was trembling. "They are angry, my king," Old Sam said. "They are very angry. There is a stain on your house, a lie that has grown too big." "What lie? Is it about Ben?" "It is deeper than Ben," Old Sam said. He picked up a shell and held it to his ear. "I hear a voice crying in the wilderness, a mother's voice. She calls for justice." The king closed his eyes. Ngozi, it is always Ngozi. Is she dead, Sam? Tell me the truth. Did she die in the forest all those years ago? The shells are confused, old Sam admitted. One says death, one says life. It is like she is walking between two worlds. But there is something else. A seed. A seed that was planted in the dust and has now sprouted. A seed? A child, my king. A son. King David grabbed the priest's arm. My son? The baby she took with her? He is close, old Sam whispered. Very close. I feel his heat. He walks in your shadow, but you do not see him. Where is he? Open your eyes, David. Look at those who serve you. Look at those you ignore. The diamond is often hidden in the mud. Suddenly the door flew open. Queen Rose marched in. She looked frantic. Her wig was slightly crooked. David, what are you doing with this old wizard? She shrieked. We have guests arriving from Abuja. You need to get dressed. Woman, leave us, the king shouted. It was the first time in years he had raised his voice at her. Rose was shocked. She took a step back. David? I said leave, the king roared. He stood up, looking taller and stronger than he had in months. I am the king, and I am talking to the gods about the wickedness in my own home. Rose turned pale. She looked at old Sam, who was smiling a small, knowing smile. She turned and ran out of the room. She knows, old Sam said quietly. Her fear smells like rotten meat. We must act fast, my king. Tonight. The spirits say tonight is the turning point. The sun began to set, painting the sky a bruised purple. Thunder rumbled in the distance, a warning of another storm. Joseph waited until Mama Nkechi was busy frying plantains. He slipped out the back door of the kitchen. He climbed over the low wall at the back of the compound and dropped into the tall grass. He ran. He ran past the market where women were packing up their stalls. He ran past the church where the choir was practicing. He ran until his chest burned and his legs felt like jelly. He reached the edge of the evil forest. It looked like a giant mouth waiting to swallow him. The trees were swaying in the wind, their branches creaking like old bones. He turned on his small flashlight. The beam was weak, cutting a thin yellow line through the darkness. Mary, he whispered. Mary. He followed the path he knew. He stumbled over roots. He swatted away mosquitoes. Up ahead, he saw a flicker of light. Fire. No, it was too small. It was a torch. He stopped and crouched down. Through the leaves, he saw the thugs. There were 4 of them now. They were standing around Mary's hut. They were laughing and drinking gin from small sachets. Is she in there? The leader asked. Yes, I heard her singing that crazy song, another said. Good, pour the fuel. Joseph watched in horror as they splashed petrol all over the dry thatch roof. The smell drifted toward him, sharp and chemical. Hey, witch, the leader yelled. Prince Ben sends his greetings. He struck a match. The flame flared up. Joseph didn't think. He didn't plan. He just acted. No-oo, he screamed. He charged out of the bushes, waving his machete. He looked like a wild spirit. The thugs were surprised. They dropped the match. It fell into a puddle of mud and fizzled out. Who is that? One thug asked, squinting into the dark. It's just a boy, the leader laughed. Look, a little hero. Joseph stood between the thugs and the hut. He was shaking, but he held the machete high. Leave her alone. Go away. Or what? The leader sneered. He pulled out a long dagger. You want to die too? Tie him up, the leader ordered. Throw him inside. We burn them both. 2 thugs lunged at Joseph. He swung the machete, but he was not a fighter. One thug grabbed his arm and twisted it. The machete fell. The other thug punched him in the stomach. Joseph doubled over, gasping for air. They grabbed him by his arms and legs. Open the door. They kicked the door of the hut open and threw Joseph inside. He landed hard on the dirt floor. Joseph, a voice whispered from the corner. It was Mary. She was huddled against the wall, holding her bundle of rags. She didn't look scared. She looked sad. Mama, Joseph groaned, we have to get out. Outside, the leader laughed again. Okay, let's try this again. Light it up. He lit another match. This time he threw it perfectly onto the roof. Whoosh! The petrol caught fire instantly. Flames raced up the sides of the hut. The heat was sudden and intense. Smoke began to pour through the cracks in the roof. "Burn, witch, burn," the thugs chanted. Inside, Joseph coughed. The smoke was stinging his eyes. He crawled over to Mary. "Mama, move. We have to break the wall." Mary looked at him. For a moment, her madness seemed to clear. She looked at his face in the orange light of the fire. "You came," she said softly. "You came back for me." "I will always come back," Joseph choked out. "Now help me." He grabbed a heavy wooden pestle that was in the corner. He smashed it against the back wall of the hut. The mud was old and dry. A chunk fell off. "Again," Mary cried. She stood up. She found strength she didn't know she had. She kicked the wall with her good leg. Crash! A hole opened up. Fresh air rushed in. "Go!" Joseph pushed her. "My baby," she cried, reaching for the bundle of rags. "Leave it, I am here," Joseph shouted. He grabbed her hand. "I am here." Mary looked at the rags, then at Joseph. She dropped the bundle. She climbed through the hole. Joseph followed her just as the roof collapsed behind them in a shower of sparks. They tumbled out into the thick bush behind the hut. They rolled down a small slope and landed in a muddy ditch. Above them, the hut was a bonfire. The flames reached high into the night sky. The thugs were cheering on the other side, thinking their job was done. "Did you hear them scream?" one thug asked. "Yeah, they are toast. Let's go get the rest of our money from the prince." The thugs walked away, their laughter fading into the night. Joseph and Mary lay in the mud, breathing hard. The rain started again, a gentle drizzle that hissed as it hit the burning hut. Joseph sat up. He wiped mud from his face. "Are you okay?" Mary didn't answer. She was staring at him. The firelight flickered on her face. She reached out a trembling hand and touched his cheek. "Who are you?" she asked. Her voice was different now. It wasn't the voice of a crazy woman. It was steady. "I am Joseph. I work at the palace." "Joseph," she repeated. She frowned as if trying to catch a slippery fish in her mind. "Why do I know that name?" Joseph sat back. He felt something digging into his leg. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the red coral bead. It was warm. "I found this," he said, holding it up. "At the palace. Old Sam said it has a royal fire." Mary gasped. She snatched the bead from his hand. She held it to her chest and closed her eyes. Suddenly she screamed. It wasn't a scream of pain, but of memory. Images flooded her brain. The king giving her the bead, the day she gave birth, the baby. "This is mine," she whispered. "King David gave it to me on our wedding night." She opened her eyes and grabbed Joseph's arm. She pulled him close. She ripped the sleeve of his shirt. "Hey," Joseph said. But Mary wasn't listening. She was looking at his upper arm. There, just below his shoulder, was a birthmark. It was shaped like a crescent moon, dark and distinct. Mary started to laugh, then she started to cry. She rocked back and forth. "The moon," she sobbed. "The moon mark. David has it. His father had it. And my baby had it." She looked into Joseph's eyes. "You are not Joseph the servant. You are Prince Joseph, my son." Joseph felt the world spin. "Your son? But you are Mary. The village says you are mad." "I was mad," she said fiercely. "They poisoned me. Rose put herbs in my soup to make me forget, to make me crazy so she could steal my life. But the fire woke me up. The heat burned the fog away." She stood up. She was dirty, ragged, and smelled of smoke, but she stood tall. She looked like a queen. "They tried to kill us tonight, my son. Ben and Rose, they know who you are. That is why they sent the fire." "Ben?" Joseph asked. "My brother?" "He is no brother to you," Mary spat. "He is a viper, but we will crush his head." "What do we do?" Joseph asked. He felt scared but also strong. He wasn't a nobody anymore. He was a prince. "We go to the king," Mary said. "We go to your father. He thinks we are dead. We will show him that life is stronger than death. But the guards, they won't let us in." I am just a servant to them, and you—" "I know a way," Mary said. "A secret way. David showed me long ago, when we were young lovers hiding from his father. There is a tunnel behind the old shrine. It leads straight into the palace garden." She held out her hand. "Come, my son, let us go home." Joseph took her hand. It was rough but warm. Together they turned away from the burning hut and walked into the dark forest. They were walking toward the palace. They were walking toward the truth. And nothing, not fire, not poison, not guards, was going to stop them now. While the forest burned, Queen Rose sat in her grand bedroom. The room was painted gold and pink. She sat at her dressing table, looking at herself in the mirror. She was putting on night cream, but her hands were shaking. The jar of cream rattled against the glass table. "Why am I afraid?" she thought. "I am the queen. I have won." But she didn't feel like a winner. She felt a deep, cold dread in her stomach. It felt like she had swallowed a block of ice. Her phone buzzed on the table. She jumped. It was Mark. She picked it up quickly. "Hello?" "It is done, my queen." Mark's voice crackled over the line. "The fire is burning bright. The hut is gone." "And the occupants?" Rose asked. Her voice was a whisper. "The boys said they saw two people inside, the mad woman and a boy. They didn't come out." Rose closed her eyes. "A boy? Which boy?" "Some skinny servant boy. He tried to be a hero. Foolish boy." Rose dropped the phone. "Joseph." It had to be Joseph. She remembered seeing him in the king's study the night before. She remembered the strange look in the king's eyes when he looked at the boy. "He is gone," she told herself. "The threat is gone. My son will be king." But the dread didn't go away. Suddenly, the lights in the palace flickered. Bzzzt. Then they went out. The hum of the air conditioner stopped. The room plunged into darkness. "Guards!" Rose screamed. "Start the generator. Why is there no light?" She fumbled for a candle. She lit it with trembling fingers. The small flame cast long dancing shadows on the walls. The shadows looked like people, like a woman in rags, like a boy with sad eyes. Rose grabbed a bottle of expensive perfume and threw it at the wall. Crash! The smell of roses filled the room, but it couldn't cover the smell of her own fare. "I am the queen," she hissed into the darkness. "I will not be afraid of ghosts." But deep down, she knew ghosts were the hardest enemies to fight. You couldn't shoot them, you couldn't burn them. They always came back. Down in the courtyard, Prince Ben was also in the dark. He was sitting in his car, the engine running so he could listen to music and use the car's AC. Mark was sitting next to him, smoking a cigarette. "Relax, man," Mark said. "Celebrate. You are practically king already." "I don't feel like celebrating," Ben muttered. "I feel watched." "It's just your nerves. Once the old man is gone, you will forget all this." Ben looked out the window. The moon was hidden behind clouds. The night felt heavy. "What if they escaped?" Ben asked suddenly. Mark laughed. "Escaped? From that fire?" "Impossible. They are ashes, Ben. Ashes in the wind." Ben nodded, but he didn't believe it. He had a feeling in his bones, a feeling that the game was not over yet. Deep in the forest, far from the burning hut, Joseph and Mary, now remembering herself as Queen Ngozi, were moving slowly. The rain had stopped, but the ground was slippery mud. "Are you sure about this tunnel?" Joseph asked. He was holding Mary's hand to steady her. She was limping badly. "I am sure," Ngozi said. Her voice was weak but determined. "David showed it to me. It was an escape route for the old kings during the wars. It starts behind the big Iroko tree near the stream." They reached the stream. It was swollen with rain, rushing loudly over stones. A giant Iroko tree stood on the bank, its roots thick as pythons. "Here," Ngozi pointed. Hidden between two large roots was a small opening. It was covered with vines and spiderwebs. It looked like an animal den. "We have to crawl," Ngozi said. Joseph looked at the dark hole. He hated small spaces. "Is it safe? What about snakes?" "Snakes are better than what awaits us if we go back," Ngozi said grimly. She got down on her hands and knees and crawled in. Joseph took a deep breath and followed. The tunnel was narrow and smelled of damp earth and bat droppings. It was pitch black. Joseph could feel worms squishing under his hands. He wanted to scream, but he kept going. He followed the sound of his mother's breathing. They crawled for what felt like hours. Joseph's knees were scraped and bleeding. His back ached. "We are close," Ngozi whispered ahead. "The air is changing." Suddenly, the tunnel widened. Joseph could stand up. He felt stone under his feet instead of dirt. "This is the old cellar," Ngozi said. "It leads to the wine storage under the main house." They found a wooden ladder rotting against the wall. They climbed up. At the top was a heavy trapdoor. "Push," Ngozi commanded. They both pushed. The door groaned and lifted. Dust fell on their faces. They climbed out into a room filled with old crates and bottles. It was dim, lit only by moonlight coming through a small high window. "We are inside," Joseph breathed. He couldn't believe it. They were in the palace. "Now comes the hard part," Ngozi said. She smoothed her ragged dress. She tried to wipe the soot from her face, but it just smeared. "We have to get to the king's bedroom without being seen. If Rose sees us first—" "She won't," Joseph said firmly. He picked up an empty wine bottle. "I will protect you." Ngozi smiled. It was the first genuine smile Joseph had seen on her face. "You have your father's courage." They opened the door of the wine cellar. It led into a back hallway near the kitchens. It was quiet. The generator was still off. They crept down the hall. Joseph knew the way. He had scrubbed these floors 100 times. "This way," he whispered. They turned a corner and almost bumped into a guard. The guard was sleeping on a chair, his gun resting on his lap. He was snoring loudly. Joseph put a finger to his lips. They tiptoed past him. They reached the main staircase. It was wide and grand. "Up there," Ngozi pointed, "the big double doors at the end of the hall." They started to climb. But as they reached the middle of the stairs, the lights came back on. The generator roared to life outside. The crystal chandelier above them blazed with light. "Hey, who is there?" a voice shouted from the top of the stairs. It was Queen Rose. She stood at the railing, looking down. When she saw them, her eyes bulged. She looked like she had seen a demon. "You!" she screamed. "You are dead. You are supposed to be dead." "I am very much alive, Rose," Ngozi said, her voice ringing out clear and strong. "And I have come for what you stole." "Guards!" Rose shrieked. "Guards! Assassins! Kill them now!" Heavy boots thundered down the hallway. The Red Guards were coming. "Run!" Joseph yelled. He grabbed his mother's hand and pulled her up the stairs, to the king's room. "Stop them!" Rose shouted, chasing after them. Ben appeared from a side door, holding a pistol. He saw Joseph and Ngozi running toward his father's room. "No, you don't," Ben yelled. He aimed the gun. Joseph didn't stop. His shoulder slammed the heavy door of the king's bedroom. It burst open. They fell inside onto the soft carpet. King David was sitting up in bed, reading by lamplight. He looked up, startled. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. Joseph scrambled to his feet. He helped his mother up. "Father," Joseph cried. King David looked at the dirty boy. Then he looked at the ragged woman beside him. The woman lifted her head. The king dropped his book. "Ngozi," he whispered. The room went silent. The only sound was the heavy breathing of Joseph and Ngozi. King David slowly got out of bed. He walked toward them, his eyes wide with disbelief. He reached out a shaking hand. "Ngozi, is it truly you? My spirit has been telling me." "It is me, David," Ngozi wept. She fell to her knees. "I have returned from the grave." Just then, Ben and Rose burst into the room. The guards were right behind them, guns raised. "Shoot them," Ben screamed. "They are trying to kill the king." The guards hesitated. They looked at the king, then at the intruders. They were confused. "Lower your weapons," King David commanded. His voice was not weak anymore. It was the voice of a lion. "If anyone fires a shot in this room, I will have their head." The guards lowered their guns instantly. "Father, don't listen to them," Ben shouted, waving his pistol around. "She is a witch. She bewitched you years ago, and now she is back to finish the job. And that boy, he is a thief." "Be quiet, Ben," the king snapped. He looked at Ngozi. "Tell me, where have you been?" Why did you leave me?" "I did not leave you," Ngozi said, glaring at Rose. "She sent me away. She poisoned my food. She made my mind rot. Then she paid men to drag me to the evil forest." "Lies," Rose shrieked. "She is insane, David. Look at her. She is a mad woman." "And my son?" the king asked, his voice trembling. "What happened to our baby?" Ngozi pulled Joseph forward. "He is here. This is Joseph. He was working in your own kitchen under your nose while you mourned him." King David looked at Joseph. He walked closer. He peered into the boy's face. "He looks like my father," the king whispered. "He has the mark, David," Ngozi said. "Show him, Joseph." Joseph rolled up his dirty, torn sleeve. He showed the crescent moon birthmark on his upper arm. The king gasped. He pulled up his own pajama sleeve. There, on his arm, was the exact same mark. "It is true," the king sobbed. He grabbed Joseph and pulled him into a tight hug. "My son, my firstborn." Rose collapsed onto a chair. She knew the game was up. The birthmark was proof that no one could deny. But Ben was not ready to give up. His eyes were wild. He raised his gun again. "No!" Ben shouted. "I am the king. I have waited my whole life. I will not let a kitchen boy take my crown." He aimed at Joseph's chest. "Ben, don't!" the king yelled. He tried to step in front of Joseph. Click. Ben pulled the trigger. The gun made a clicking sound. It didn't fire. Ben looked at the gun in confusion. He pulled the trigger again. Click, click. "The gods are watching," a voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned. Old Sam stood there, leaning on his staff. He was smiling. "I told you, Prince Ben," Old Sam said calmly. "No blood will be spilled by a brother's hand tonight. I put a seal on your weapon." Ben threw the gun at the wall in frustration. "I hate you. I hate all of you." He tried to run past Old Sam toward the door, but the Red Guards, realizing who the true villain was, grabbed him. Two strong men pinned Ben's arms behind his back. "Let me go. I am the prince," Ben screamed. "Not anymore," King David said. His face was hard as stone. "Guards, arrest him. And arrest her too." He pointed at Queen Rose. Rose didn't fight. She just sat there, weeping silently. "I did it for you, Ben," she whispered over and over. "I just wanted you to be king." "Take them away," the king ordered. "Take them to the police station. I will deal with them in the morning." The guards dragged Ben and Rose out of the room. Ben's screams echoed down the hallway until they faded away. King David turned back to Ngozi and Joseph. Tears were streaming down his face. "Can you forgive me?" he asked Ngozi. "I should have looked harder. I should have known." "It is in the past, my king," Ngozi said, holding his hands. "We are here now. That is all that matters." Joseph stood there, feeling overwhelmed. Yesterday, he was a servant afraid of being beaten. Today, he was a prince. He looked at his father, then at his mother. For the first time in his life, he felt safe. News travels fast in a village like Eze. By the next morning, everyone knew what had happened. The story spread like wildfire. The mad woman is the queen. The kitchen boy is the prince. Ben tried to kill his father. Crowds gathered at the palace gates. They were singing and dancing. They wanted to see the miracle. Inside the palace, things were very different. Joseph was in a luxurious bathroom. He had just had the longest, hottest bath of his life. The water had turned brown from all the dirt and soot. Servants, the same ones who used to ignore him, were now rushing around with towels and clothes. "Prince Joseph, would you like the white lace or the blue brocade?" a servant asked, bowing low. "Just Joseph is fine," Joseph mumbled. He felt shy. "No, sir, you are the prince now," the servant insisted. Joseph put on the white lace outfit. It was soft and smelled of lavender. He looked in the mirror. The boy staring back didn't look like a servant anymore. He looked regal. In the next room, female servants were fussing over Ngozi. They washed her hair, combed out the dreadlocks, and oiled her skin. They dressed her in a beautiful wrapper of green and gold. When she emerged, she was breathtaking. The years of hardship had left lines on her face, but they only made her look wiser and more dignified. Old Sam came to fetch them. The king is waiting in the throne room. The elders are here. They walked together down the grand staircase. Joseph held his mother's arm. He held his head high. The throne room was full of chiefs in red caps. When Joseph and Ngozi entered, a hush fell over the room. Then, one by one, the chiefs stood up. They bowed. King David sat on his throne. He looked 10 years younger. He stood up and opened his arms. "Behold," the king announced, his voice booming, "my queen has returned, and my son, the true heir, is found." The chiefs cheered, "Igwe, Igwe." Old Sam stepped forward holding a crown, not the king's crown, but a smaller one made for the prince. "Joseph," Old Sam said, "step forward." Joseph knelt on the leopard skin rug. "Do you promise to serve this land with truth?" Old Sam asked, "to protect the weak, to listen to the poor?" "I promise," Joseph said. His voice was steady. "I know what it is to be poor. I will never forget." Old Sam placed the crown on Joseph's head. "Rise, Prince Joseph of Umu Eze." Joseph stood up. The applause was deafening. Outside, the villagers were chanting his name, Joseph, the people's prince. King David led them to the balcony. They waved to the crowd. Joseph looked out at the sea of faces. He saw the market women, the mechanics, the farmers. He saw Mama Nkechi waving her apron and crying happy tears. He realized that his suffering had a purpose. It had taught him humility. Ben had grown up in the palace and become cruel. Joseph had grown up in the dust and become kind. The red dust of the village swirled in the air, but it didn't look dirty anymore. It looked like gold dust, dancing in the sun. Joseph smiled. He was home. The celebration in Umu Eze lasted for 3 days. Cows were slaughtered, palm wine flowed like a river, and the high-life music never stopped. But while the village danced, a different scene was unfolding at the city police station. In a damp, grey holding cell, Ben sat on a hard bench. He was no longer wearing his fine lace. His clothes were rumpled and stained. His shoes had been taken away. He looked small and pathetic. In the next cell, Mark was pacing back and forth like a caged rat. "This is your fault," Ben snapped. "If you hadn't come up with that stupid fire plan, we would be fine." Mark stopped pacing. He glared at Ben through the bars. "My fault? You are the one who couldn't wait. You are the one who wanted your father gone. I just gave you options. You pulled the trigger, or tried to." "Shut up," Ben yelled. He put his head in his hands. The shame was eating him alive. He thought about the look on his father's face. It wasn't anger, it was disappointment. That hurt more than any beating. The heavy iron door at the end of the corridor opened. A police sergeant walked in, followed by 2 men in suits. Lawyers. "Prince Ben," one of the lawyers said coldly, "or should I say, Mr. Ben, your father has sent us." Ben stood up, hopeful. "Is he getting me out? Is he dropping the charges?" The lawyer shook his head. "No. The king is a man of justice. He cannot let attempted murder go unpunished, even for his son. You and your mother, along with your accomplices, will face trial." Ben slumped back onto the bench. "Trial? I will go to prison?" "Most likely," the lawyer said, "but the king is merciful. He has requested that your sentence be served in a rehabilitation center in the north, not a maximum security prison. He wants you to learn, not just suffer." "And my mother?" Ben asked. "Queen Rose has confessed to everything," the lawyer said. "She told us about the poisoning 15 years ago. She told us about the kidnapping. She is trying to take all the blame to save you." Ben felt a tear roll down his cheek. His mother was wicked, yes, but she loved him in her own twisted way. "Tell my father." Ben's voice cracked. "Tell him I am sorry." "You can tell him yourself," the lawyer said, "in 10 years. The lawyers left. The heavy door clanged shut. Ben looked at the small window high up on the wall. He could see a patch of blue sky. He realized he would not see the red dust of Umu Eze for a very long time. He had chased a crown of gold, but now he wore a crown of shame. Meanwhile, in the women's wing of the station, Rose sat silently. She stared at the wall. She wasn't crying anymore. She was empty. She had built her whole life on a lie, a foundation of sand. And just as the Bible said, when the storm came, the house fell. And great was the fall of it. Back at the palace, the excitement had settled down, but the work was just beginning. Joseph, now Prince Joseph, had a lot to learn. It wasn't easy. For 17 years, Joseph had learned how to scrub floors, peel cassava and dodge blows. Now he had to learn how to walk with grace, how to speak to elders, and how to understand the complex laws of the land. He sat in the king's study. A pile of thick books lay on the desk in front of him. Across the desk sat old Sam, who was now his personal tutor. Again, old Sam said sternly, "What is the first duty of a king?" Joseph sighed. He rubbed his eyes. "To protect the land?" "No." Old Sam tapped the table with his staff. "That is the duty of a soldier. The first duty of a king is to listen. A king who does not listen to his people is like a blind man driving a car." "I am listening," Joseph said, "but these laws are confusing. Why are there so many rules about land disputes?" "Because land is life in Umu is," old Sam explained. "People fight over land because it feeds them. If you can solve a land dispute fairly, you can solve anything." Joseph nodded. He picked up a book. He was trying his best, but sometimes he missed the simplicity of the kitchen. Later that afternoon, King David came in. He looked stronger every day. Having his true family back was the best medicine. "How is the lesson going?" the king asked. "He is learning," old Sam said. "He has a good heart, but his head is still full of servant thoughts. He tries to clean up his own plate after eating." The king laughed. "That is not a bad thing, Sam. Humility is a strength." He turned to Joseph. "Come, my son, let us take a walk. Enough books for today." They walked out into the garden. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the grass. "Are you happy, Joseph?" the king asked. "I am grateful, father," Joseph said, "but I am also scared. I don't know if I can be the king you want me to be. Ben was raised for this. I was raised in the dirt." The king stopped walking. He put a hand on Joseph's shoulder. "Ben was raised in the palace, yes. But he never saw the people. He looked down on them from his high window. You, Joseph, you lived with them. You know what it costs to buy a cup of gari. You know how it feels when the rain leaks through the roof." The king pointed toward the palace gates. "A king who has never suffered cannot understand the suffering of his people. Your past is not a weakness, my son. It is your greatest weapon." Joseph looked at the gates. He saw the guards standing tall. He remembered how terrified he used to be of them. Now they saluted him. "I think I understand," Joseph said. "Good," the king smiled. "Now tomorrow is your first real test. The market women are coming to complain about the tax collectors. I want you to handle the meeting." "Me?" Joseph's eyes widened. "Alone?" "I will be there," the king promised. "But you will speak. Use your heart, Joseph. Use your memory of the dust." The next morning, the main courtyard was filled with women. They wore colorful wrappers and head ties. They looked angry. They were shouting and waving their hands. The tax collectors stood on one side, looking nervous. They were men in neat shirts who carried clipboards. Joseph sat on a smaller throne next to his father. His hands were sweating. He smoothed his white brocade trousers. "Silence!" the palace crier shouted, hitting a metal gong. "Gong! Gong!" The noise died down. All eyes turned to the podium. "We are here to listen," Joseph said. His voice shook a little, then he cleared his throat and spoke louder. "We are here to listen to the mothers of Umu Eze. Speak." A large woman stepped forward. It was Mama Nkechi, the head cook from the palace kitchen. She wasn't working today. She was representing the market union. Joseph smiled when he saw her. It gave him courage. "My prince," Mama Nkechi said, bowing slightly, "we are suffering. These men," she pointed at the tax collectors, "they come every day. They ask for money for the stall, money for security, money for cleaning. If we don't pay, they seize our goods. Last week, they took my neighbor's basket of tomatoes because she was short 50 naira." The crowd grumbled in agreement. "It is true, they are thieves." Joseph turned to the head tax collector. "Is this true?" The man adjusted his glasses. "Your Highness, we are just following the rules. The council set the rates. We need revenue to fix the roads." 50 naira, Joseph repeated. You took a woman's livelihood for 50 naira. It is the law, sir, the man insisted. Joseph stood up. He walked down the steps until he was standing on the same level as the women. I remember, Joseph said quietly. The crowd leaned in to hear him. I remember when I first came to this village. I had no money. I was hungry. A woman selling a kara near the post office gave me 2 bean cakes for free. She said, "Eat, boy. Hunger is a bad companion." The women nodded. They understood. That 50 naira you demand, Joseph said to the tax collector, might be the profit from selling a whole tray of pepper. To you, it is small change. To them, it is school fees. It is medicine. He turned to his father. Father, I propose we change the law. No daily collection. Let them pay a small amount once a month. And no seizing of goods. If someone cannot pay, we give them a grace period. The tax collector looked shocked. But the revenue will drop. The revenue might drop, Joseph said firmly, but the happiness of the people will rise. And a happy kingdom is a rich kingdom. King David clapped his hands slowly, then the chiefs clapped, then the women erupted into cheers. They danced, they sang Joseph's name. Thank you, my son, Mama Nkechi beamed at him. Joseph walked back up the stairs. He sat down. He felt tired, but he also felt light. He had done it. He had used his past to fix the future. Well done, King David whispered to him. You are a king already. That evening, Joseph went to find his mother. Queen Ngozi was in the garden, tending to the flowers. She loved plants. She said they were like people. They needed care and patience to grow. Mama, Joseph said, I did it. Ngozi hugged him. She smelled of earth and jasmine. I heard. The servants are talking about nothing else. They say you have the wisdom of Solomon. I was just being fair, Joseph shrugged. Fairness is rare, my love, Ngozi said, especially in palaces. She looked at the moon rising above the trees. It was a crescent moon, just like the mark on their arms. Do you ever miss the forest? Joseph asked. Ngozi paused. I miss the quiet, she admitted, but I do not miss the loneliness. Here I have you. I have David. My heart is full. What about Ben? Joseph asked. It was the first time he had mentioned his brother's name in days. Ngozi's face hardened slightly, then softened. I pray for him. I pray that the red dust of the north washes his soul clean. Hate is a heavy load to carry, Joseph. Do not carry it for him. I won't, Joseph promised. They stood there in silence, watching the fireflies dance in the dark. The storm was over. The fire was out. The kingdom was at peace. Time, like the seasons, has a way of healing the land. Just as the rainy season washes away the dust of the harmattan, the years that followed washed away the pain in the palace of Umu Eze. It had been 5 years since the night of the fire, 5 years since the mad woman returned as a queen and the servant boy became a prince. The palace looked different now. The sharp metal spikes on the fence had been removed. The gates were often open, allowing people to come in with their grievances or just to greet the king. The air conditioners still hummed, but the windows were often open to let in the natural breeze and the sounds of the village. Prince Joseph was no longer a skinny boy. He had grown into a tall, strong man. He wore his responsibilities well. He walked with a confident stride, but he still stopped to greet the gardeners and the sweepers by name. One Tuesday afternoon, Joseph was in the royal garage. He wasn't driving, he was fixing an engine. He loved mechanics. It reminded him of how things worked, how many small parts had to move together to make something run smoothly. Just like a kingdom.